I found out my boyfriend was married. Not legally, not on paper, but married, in a video game, and planning to meet his in-game wife in real life. I didn't confront him when I found out. I didn't scream. I didn't cry on the spot. I showed up at the meeting instead. That moment, when he looked up from his coffee and realized the woman sitting across from him wasn't the fantasy he'd been building for months, that was the moment everything broke open. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At the time, I still thought my relationship was normal. 4 years together, 2 years living under the same roof. Shared rent, shared routines, shared silence that I didn't yet know was growing heavier by the day. The first sign was a game. A massive online game he downloaded just for fun. An hour after work, then 3, then 5. I'd call his name from the kitchen, steam rising from plates I'd timed carefully. "Dinner's ready." "Just a second," he'd say, eyes locked on the screen. "We're about to finish the raid." 30 minutes later, dinner was cold. He didn't notice. I did. When I tried to talk about it, he laughed it off. "Don't be jealous of a video game," he said. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself love meant patience. I told myself hobbies were healthy. Then he started dressing up to play. Not to go out, not for a date, for his computer. Nice clothes, styled hair, the kind of care he hadn't taken for me in months. When I asked why, he said it was for guild screenshots. I remember staring at him, trying to understand how someone could put so much effort into being seen by people who weren't real, while barely looking at the woman standing right in front of him. Then the secrecy started. The angled screen, the minimized windows, the phone lighting up during dinner, his smile soft in a way it hadn't been with me in a long time. And then the money. His half of the rent was late, twice. "I had unexpected expenses," he said. I believed him. I shouldn't have. Because while I was worrying about bills and dinners eaten alone, my boyfriend was planning a wedding. Not with me, with someone else. And I was about to walk straight into it. Before the game, before the secrets, before I learned what it feels like to live with someone who's already left you emotionally. We were good. That's the hardest part to explain to people now, because hindsight makes everything look fake. But it wasn't. Not at first. We met almost 4 years ago through mutual friends. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just one of those nights where conversation flowed easily, where laughter didn't feel forced, where I went home thinking, that felt comfortable. And comfort, at that stage of my life, felt like a gift. He was attentive back then, not grand gesture attentive, steady, reliable. The kind of man who showed up when he said he would, who remembered small things, who made plans that actually happened. After a string of relationships that burned fast and died loudly, that steadiness felt like safety. We moved in together 2 years later. It made sense, financially, logistically, emotionally, or at least I thought it did. We split rent evenly, $1,800 a month. We argued occasionally about dishes, about laundry, about whose turn it was to buy groceries. Normal stuff. The kind of arguments you forget about the next day. The kind that make you feel like you're building something real. I cooked more than he did, not because he demanded it, but because I liked it. I liked the rhythm of chopping vegetables, the quiet hum of the kitchen, the feeling of doing something tangible after long days at work. He'd sit at the counter sometimes, scrolling on his phone, telling me about his day. I listened. I always listened. At night, we'd watch shows together. Nothing special, just background noise while we talked about work, friends, plans that felt far enough away to be safe. Vacations we might take someday, things we might buy, the vague outline of a future that didn't yet require hard decisions. I thought we were on the same page. I didn't realize I was reading a page he'd already turned. Looking back, there were small shifts I ignored, subtle changes that didn't register as alarms at the time. He laughed less at my jokes, answered more texts than questions, stayed up later while I went to bed alone, telling myself he just needed time to unwind. When he downloaded the game 8 months ago, it barely registered. "Something to do after work," he said. I nodded. Everyone needs an outlet. Everyone deserves something that's just theirs. At first, it really was harmless. An hour here. A dungeon run there. He'd tell me about loot drops like it was some inside joke I didn't quite get, but smiled at anyway. I didn't feel excluded. I felt adjacent. Then the adjacency turned into distance. His world grew louder and brighter on the screen, while ours grew quieter in the room we shared. I didn't know yet that while I was still thinking in terms of we, he was already learning how to live inside a fantasy where I didn't exist at all. And I definitely didn't know that, in that other world, he wasn't just playing. He was building a life. The first time I felt something was wrong. Not just different, not just annoying, but wrong. I was standing in the doorway of our bedroom, watching him from behind. He didn't hear me come in. His shoulders were tense, leaning forward, headset on, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. The glow of the screen lit his face in sharp blues and purples, colors that didn't belong in our quiet apartment. He was smiling. Not the polite smile he gave me when I talked about my day, not the tired smile we shared before bed. This one was softer, focused, intimate. I cleared my throat. He startled, yanked one ear cup off. Jesus, you scared me. Sorry, I said automatically. I was just going to ask if you wanted tea. In a bit, he said, already turning back. We're in the middle of something. We. That word landed differently than it used to. I waited, counted breaths, watched his screen from a distance I pretended was casual. Avatars clustered together in some ornate digital city. His character stood close, too close, to another one. They moved in sync, stopping and starting like a practice pair. I told myself it was nothing. But from that night on, the small things started stacking up. He angled his monitor away from me, closed tabs when I walked by, lowered his voice when he spoke into the headset. And then there was the laughter. It came during dinner sometimes, his phone lighting up beside his plate. He'd glance down, lips curving, thumbs flying, while my fork paused midair. What's funny? I asked once. Just guild stuff, he said. You wouldn't get it. I laughed along, even though the words stung more than I wanted to admit. 2 months later, he started getting dressed up to play. Not just clean clothes, nice clothes. The shirt I liked, the one that used to mean something. He styled his hair, put on cologne, sat down at his desk like he was about to be seen. Why are you so dressed up? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. We're doing guild screenshots tonight, he said without looking at me. I want my character to look good. I stared at his back, trying to process the sentence. Your character is a dragon knight, I said slowly, with armor and a sword. He smiled. Yeah, but still. I let it go. I let everything go. Until money entered the picture. Our rent was due on the 1st. It always had been. And when his half didn't come through on time, not once, but twice, I felt a tightness in my chest I couldn't ignore. I had some unexpected expenses, he said when I asked. Like what? Just stuff. He paid eventually. But the delay gnawed at me. Because while his rent was late, his gaming setup kept expanding. New gear, new subscriptions, new digital purchases he didn't mention, but didn't hide very well either. And then I noticed how often he was online. 6 hours, 8 hours, sometimes until 3 in the morning. I work in IT network security. Patterns are literally my job. And this pattern? It wasn't just obsession. It was investment. So I did what I'd been trained to do. I looked closer, and what I found was the beginning of the end. I didn't go looking for betrayal. That's something people always assume later. That I must have been suspicious, paranoid, already halfway out the door. The truth is uglier and quieter. I went looking for answers, for reassurance, for something that told me I wasn't crazy for feeling like my relationship was slipping through my fingers while I stood there pretending everything was fine. We shared the Wi-Fi bill, shared the router, shared the space. Access wasn't sneaking, it was logistics. I checked the router logs first. Out of habit, more than suspicion. DNS queries don't lie, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The game wasn't just running in the evenings. It was running constantly, before work, after work, deep into the night, sometimes straight through until morning. 6 to 8 hours a day, every day. That's when something inside me shifted from uneasy to alert. I created a throwaway account. I told myself it was temporary, just to understand what had him so captivated, just to see the world he kept choosing over me. I downloaded the game, followed the digital breadcrumbs, found his server. It took me 2 days to locate his guild. There's a public roster feature. I didn't even have to be clever. There it was. His character. Mystic Rose. I remember blinking at the name, my mouth slightly open, like maybe if I stared long enough, it would change into something less personal, less intimate. It didn't. I spent a week leveling my character, learning mechanics I never wanted to know, navigating landscapes that felt unreal in a way that made my skin crawl. I joined a different guild, so I wouldn't be visible, but I watched. Observed. And that's when I saw him. Dragon Knight. They were inseparable. Always together. Questing. Raiding. Standing side by side in the main city, their characters performing little emotes, bows, touches, movements that mimicked affection. Other players joked about them like a couple. Then the announcement appeared. Mystic Rose and Dragon Knight are getting married. Saturday, 8 o'clock p.m. Server time, Crystal Gardens. I stared at the screen, my hands cold, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Married. I logged in that Saturday night and watched the entire ceremony. 40 players gathered. An altar. Another player officiating. Custom vows. His vows. You make me laugh every day. You understand me in ways no one else does. I can't wait to see what our future holds together. I was standing in our apartment, barefoot on the same floor we'd vacuumed together last weekend, while my boyfriend promised a future to someone else. After the ceremony, they honeymooned in some in-game fantasy location. Their characters sat close. Other players congratulated them. Screenshots flooded the guild chat. And then I saw the message that finally shattered any illusion I had left. "When's the IRL meetup happening?" someone asked. Dragon Knight replied, "Working on it." Mystic Rose added a winking emoji. That night I checked the shared computer. Auto-filled passwords. No hacking. No guesswork. Emails. 6 months worth. Real names. Real photos. Explicit messages. Plans. A coffee shop 2 weeks from now. A city halfway between them. And one line that cut deeper than everything else combined. "I'll handle my living situation after we meet. I just need to make sure the chemistry is real. I'm basically living with a roommate anyway." 4 years. Reduced to a word. I sat with that knowledge for 3 days. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him at home. I was going to meet him. I didn't sleep the night before the meetup. Not because I was spiraling or crying into a pillow the way people imagine betrayal looks. It was quieter than that. Heavier. Like my body knew something irreversible was about to happen, even if my mind was still trying to keep up. I watched him that morning like I was already watching a stranger. He moved through the apartment with a nervous energy I hadn't seen in months, checking his phone, humming under his breath, pacing. When he got dressed, he chose carefully. The shirt I'd bought him for his birthday last year, the one he used to save for nice occasions. "Big day?" I asked lightly, leaning against the kitchen counter. He didn't look at me. "Just meeting a friend from work. We're going shopping." Friend, work. He kissed my cheek before leaving. Quick, distracted. "Love you," he said. I stood there long after the door closed, my chest tight, my hands curled into fists I hadn't realized I'd made. I waited 20 minutes before leaving. The drive felt unreal, like I was watching my life from a few feet outside my own body. I arrived early, parked with a clear view of the coffee shop entrance, and sat there gripping the steering wheel while my heart tried to beat its way out of my ribcage. At 1:55 p.m., his car pulled in. I watched him check his reflection in the mirror, fix his hair, adjust his shirt. The care he took hurt more than anger ever could. 5 minutes later, I walked inside. He was already there, seated at a corner table, facing the door, waiting. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight up to him and sat down. The look on his face unfolded in stages: confusion, recognition, shock, panic, and then calculation. "What?" His voice caught. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, calm in a way that surprised even me. "Funny story. Your game wife couldn't make it." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What?" "She's not coming," I said evenly, but I read her emails. The vows were touching, by the way. I attended the wedding. The color drained from his face. "You're on the game?" he whispered. "For 2 weeks," I said. "I watched everything. The wedding, the honeymoon, the Discord messages, the part where you called me your roommate." People nearby glanced over. He noticed and lowered his voice. "Can we talk about this at home?" "No," I said. My hands were steady on the table. "We're here now. Explain." "It's not real," he said quickly. "It's just a game." The emails were real. Planning to leave me was real. Spending our rent money to impress someone else was very real. He stood abruptly. "This was a mistake. I'm leaving." I stood too. "We live together. We need to figure out logistics. I'll get my stuff this week." "No," I said, my voice firm. "The lease is in my name. You can get your things today." His eyes flashed. "You can't do that." "I can," I said, "and I am." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe he didn't. Because in that moment, I wasn't the woman waiting patiently at home anymore. I was done reacting. I was choosing. He didn't cry. He went quiet instead. That kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. Tight-jawed, controlled, like something volatile is being held down by force. His hands trembled once when he reached for his keys, then stilled. He didn't look at me as we walked out of the coffee shop, just kept his eyes forward like if he stayed focused enough, this might still be salvageable. Outside, the air was sharp. He turned on me near his car. "Stop following me." We need to deal with this, I said. We share a home. He scoffed. Not anymore. That's funny, I replied evenly, because you were planning to leave me after confirming chemistry with a stranger. His jaw flexed. He opened his mouth, closed it again. No tears. Just frustration leaking through clenched teeth. I need time, he said finally. You ambushed me. I showed up, I corrected. You ambushed me for 6 months. He pulled out his phone, started typing fast. I already knew who. Dragon Knight, damage control. You spent our rent money on in-game purchases, I said, watching his face. Your half was late twice. That's my money. No, I said. That was our rent, and I covered it while you bought virtual gifts. Silence. I waited. Did you buy her gifts too? I asked. He didn't answer. That was enough. I gave him 2 hours. When I got back to the apartment, he was already packing, shoving clothes into garbage bags, movements sharp, mechanical. He kept checking his phone, waiting, hoping. Nothing. Dragon Knight didn't respond. He finally spoke without looking at me. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You succeeded anyway. It just happened, he said. We talked. It felt real. It felt real to you, I said. You were ready to throw away 4 years for someone you'd never met. He stopped moving then, leaned against the wall like the weight finally registered. Still no tears, just a long exhale through his nose. I'm staying with a friend tonight, he muttered. The one you were shopping with? I asked. He grabbed the last bag. You're being cruel. No, I said quietly. I'm being done. He left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. I changed the locks that night. $200 for an emergency locksmith. Worth every cent. Because the escalation didn't end there. It was only beginning. The apartment felt wrong after he left. Not empty, wrong. Like a room after a storm has passed through it, where everything is still standing, but none of it feels safe anymore. His absence was loud in the quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the imprint of his routines everywhere I looked. I sat on the edge of the couch for a long time without turning on any lights. This was the moment people imagine as relief, freedom, closure. It wasn't. It was exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones when adrenaline wears off and your body finally realizes what it's been holding together. My hands shook when I stood up. I had to lean against the counter just to breathe evenly. I didn't cry. I stared. At the mug he always used. At the dent in the cushion where he sat every night. At the router blinking steadily, indifferent to everything it had helped reveal. That night, I slept in short bursts. Every sound pulled me awake. My phone stayed face down on the nightstand, buzzing occasionally with blocked numbers, voicemails I didn't listen to yet. I already knew what they'd say. The next few days blurred together. Day 3, he called from a friend's phone. I think you overreacted, his voice said in the voicemail. Controlled, measured, like he was trying on reason as a tactic. We can work through this. Work through what? The fact that he'd emotionally replaced me while still living under my roof? The fact that he called me a roommate while planning a future with someone else? I deleted the message. Day 5, he showed up with a friend. I didn't open the door. We just want to talk like adults, his friend said through the wood. I already did, I replied from the other side. I changed the locks. You're being unreasonable. He made calculated choices for 6 months, I said. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. They left. The dark moment didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly. At night, I replayed everything. Every conversation I'd brushed off. Every moment I'd chosen patience over intuition. I questioned myself in ways that felt dangerous. Was I boring? Was I too predictable? Did I miss something obvious? That's the trap. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It tries to rewrite your memory of yourself. I found myself standing in the kitchen one evening, staring at nothing, when the thought hit me hard enough to make my chest tighten. He was willing to throw me away without even warning me. Not a conversation, not a chance to fix things. Just plans made quietly, behind my back. That realization broke something open. Not anger, clarity. Because whatever pain I was feeling now, this hollow, aching quiet, it was still better than being someone's placeholder while they chased a fantasy. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let his choices define my ending. And the truth, the full truth, was about to finish what he started. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It arrived with paperwork. 4 weeks after he moved out, just when the quiet had started to feel survivable, I got a letter from a lawyer. His lawyer. The envelope was thin, smug in its simplicity. Inside were demands that made me laugh out loud, not because they were funny, but because of how detached from reality they were. Immediate return of all his belongings. $2,500 for emotional distress. $1,800 for rent he claimed he'd paid for an upcoming month, access to all shared streaming accounts. I sat at the table, letter spread in front of me, my pulse steady in a way that surprised me. This was the moment he thought he could flip the narrative. So I responded, through my own lawyer. No explanations, no emotional language, just facts. His belongings were already packed and accessible in a storage unit. He had not paid rent for the upcoming month. Bank statements proved it. He was late 2 previous months, $900 each. During those same months, he spent hundreds on in-game purchases. Receipts attached, statements highlighted, dates aligned. The fantasy didn't survive contact with documentation. His lawyer went quiet, but the fantasy man didn't. Dragon Knight resurfaced. Apparently, he was real. 26, lived a few hours away, and furious. He found my social media somehow and messaged me. You ruined everything. We had something real. Do you know how much planning went into that meeting? I replied once. Your online girlfriend was living with me, using shared money, planning to leave me after meeting you. Then I blocked him. He didn't take that well. He started showing up at my workplace, never inside, always in the parking lot, sitting in his car, watching. The first time I documented it. The second time I called the police. The third time I filed for a restraining order. Standing in court, explaining this to a judge who clearly did not want to be there, I realized something strange. I wasn't embarrassed. He was. The order was granted, 30 days. He violated it the next day. He spent the night in jail. The restraining order was extended to a year. And my ex's response? She started an online fundraiser to help Dragon Knight with his legal fees. I stared at the page, numb. That was the moment it fully clicked. I hadn't lost him to a game. I had escaped someone who would choose fantasy every single time, even when reality was burning around them. And from that moment on, the power dynamic was over. I thought the restraining order would be the end of it. I was wrong. Chaos doesn't disappear when you set boundaries. It just looks for another way in. A week after the court date, I got a message from someone I didn't expect. His friend from work. The same friend he'd claimed to be shopping with the day of the meetup. She asked if we could talk. Neutral place, public, no drama. I agreed. She didn't waste time. I need you to know something, she said, fingers wrapped tight around her coffee cup. He's been lying, to everyone, including me. Apparently, while staying on her couch, he'd told her a very different story. That I was controlling, financially abusive, that I didn't let him have friends, that I monitored him constantly. I listened without interrupting, my face calm even as something sour twisted in my stomach. I believed him at first, she admitted, until he started gaming 12 hours a day in my spare room, not helping with groceries, not cleaning, leaving dishes everywhere. I realized this wasn't a man escaping control. This was someone avoiding responsibility. She looked embarrassed, angry, tired. I've given him 30 days to move out, she said, but he doesn't have anywhere to go. I took a slow breath. He has parents. They live across the country. Then he should start packing. She nodded. Relief flickered across her face. I thought you should know. 2 days later, he tried calling me again. New number. I answered once. I need help, he said. His voice was flat, not broken, not emotional, just desperate in the way people get when consequences finally corner them. I have nowhere to go. You do, I said. You just don't like your options. I made mistakes. You made choices. We were together for 4 years. And you were planning to leave me for someone you'd never met, I said, after months of lying. Silence. So no, I finished. You need to figure this out yourself. I hung up, blocked the number. That should have been it. But a few weeks later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. 15 pages. From Dragon Knight. It was unhinged. He detailed their entire online relationship. Late-night conversations, future plans, how deeply understood he'd felt, how I had destroyed the most important relationship of his life. I didn't read past the first few pages. I forwarded it to my lawyer. She forwarded it to the judge. The restraining order was extended to 2 years. He was ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation. After that, the noise finally began to fade. My ex moved back across the country. Her parents bought her a plane ticket. Before she left, she sent one final message. I hope you're happy. You ruined everything. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. I didn't ruin anything. You built a fantasy and got angry when reality didn't match it. She never responded. And for the first time in months, the fallout stopped falling. 8 weeks after everything finally went quiet, I sat alone in the apartment and did the accounting. Not just the money, the damage. What he owed me totaled $2,200. I got $1,200 back after his parents stepped in and forced him to pay something. Not all of it, but enough to close the loop. The rest? I let it go. Some debts cost more to chase than they're worth. The rest was harder to measure. $200 for an emergency locksmith, $240 for the storage unit, $800 in legal fees, $600 in counting for therapy. Almost $3,000 to untangle myself from someone who had already emotionally left months before he physically did. And still, worth it. Therapy helped in ways I didn't expect. Not because I needed someone to tell me he was wrong, but because I needed to hear that I wasn't. My therapist put it plainly. He built an escape fantasy. You were real. Real requires accountability. I asked the question everyone asks eventually. Did I cause this? Did I neglect him? Smother him? Miss some critical flaw in myself? The answer was simple. No. I showed up. I communicated. I noticed the red flags and tried to address them. He chose fantasy anyway. Curiosity got the better of me once. I logged into the throwaway account one last time. Mystic Rose was still there. Still online. 14 hours that day. No longer married in-game. New guild. Same pattern. I logged out and uninstalled the game. I didn't need reminders. Life now is quieter. Not perfect. Just stable. I adopted a cat. Named him Router because I'm still a nerd and he keeps knocking over my networking equipment. Work's been good. I got promoted. Turns out when you're not managing someone else's double life, you have energy for your own. Dating is strange. The first time I told this story, the date ended early. Apparently, betrayal is a red flag when you're the one who survived it. The second time, I didn't mention him at all. That went better. People ask if I regret how I handled it, showing up at the coffee shop instead of confronting him earlier. No, that moment gave me clarity. I watched fantasy collide with reality, watched him realize the world he'd built didn't include a safety net. Was it kind? Maybe not. But kindness had already been exhausted. Here's what I learned. If someone hides how they spend their time, that's a problem. Emotional affairs are still affairs, even if they happen through a screen. Fantasy feels safer than reality because it's curated. Real life isn't. Document everything. It matters. And wanting honesty is not control. Most of all, when someone shows you they value an illusion more than the life you're building together, believe them. Me, I'm here. Router is asleep on my keyboard. I've got dinner plans this weekend. Work tomorrow. It's normal. It's boring. It's real. And after everything, that feels like peace. If you've been through something similar, if your intuition is whispering that something isn't right, listen to it. Protect yourself. Trust what you see, not what you're told. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it helped you or reminded you that you're not alone, feel free to share it. I'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, take care of yourself.